Hi, and welcome back to Still Evolving, where we explore the truth behind lasting performance and resilience. Rather than rely on perfection or superhuman ability, our conversation will highlight how real strength emerges through simple, intentional habits grounded in self-compassion, adaptability, and the ability to grow through life's inevitable setbacks. Today's guest is Jonathan Kearns, an experienced executive with more than 25 years in technology, product strategy, and business transformation. He is the CEO of Sanctuary Golf and Social Club, where he is leading a new chapter of growth and shaping a premier member experience. Jonathan also serves as Vice President of Programs and Operations for the mortgage industry's national standards body, where he helps guide modernization efforts and the responsible use of emerging technologies. His career includes longtime leadership in the digital mortgage and e-signature space, along with entrepreneurial success building and selling to technology companies. Jonathan is known for blending technical experience with practical, thoughtful leadership that strengthens teams and delivers meaningful results. Let's get to our conversation with Jonathan Kearns. Welcome, Jonathan. Grateful for you to be here. Just a pleasure to share in the conversation about your journey, how you've responded through life setbacks, the adversity or challenges, and then as a business leader, surely like the lessons learned that you've taken away as you continue to evolve and really excitingly contributing back to your community that you're in. Let me
Thanks
turn
for
it
having
to
us
you.
part of it. Yeah, thanks for having us part of it. It's exciting. I love what you're doing here, and looking forward to the chat.
Awesome. So why don't you start off sharing with our audience a bit of your journey, some of the motivations along the way, and what you're working on?
Yeah, I started my businesses when I was very young. 24 was when I started my first IT business, so it was in 1999. But I'd always done things, I guess, ahead of time. I was already married. I already had a couple kids. It was just part of the plan. We decided, and sometimes, my wife and I, Michelle, talk about that we were too young to know better at the time, right? Didn't think about it, and so just kind of went with it. We had a lot of success at the beginning. That was 99, and so it was a great time to start an IT business. The industry was transforming from big VARs, you added resellers and things, to where Dell and Gateway were coming in, and they needed more technicians and people who knew how to install and fix it because people were buying it more online. So it was a really good time. But then, if you remember, there was a dot-com bubble and a dot-com burst, and we rode that as well. So that was our first level of adversity, was going through that aspect where went from making one set of money to another, back down to even less than what you originally made when you were an employee. And that was interesting, but it was fun. At that same time, I had met a couple of wonderful ladies who had an idea to start a digital signature application. This is way before DocuSign or anything like that. And so that was also in 99. And then so 2000, we started building that. It's called Sign Online, which then turned into eSign Systems. So we did that for, a number of years. I finally just left that product probably 6-7 years ago, but we'd sold it off a long time ago. Really had two jobs my whole life, and two different career paths, one being in tech, mortgage tech, and then outsourced IT.
Fantastic. You mentioned the dot-com bubble and burst and the adversity that brought. I'm just curious, how did that ripple across your world, right? Like, you've got the financial aspect of it where you talked about all of a sudden what you're bringing in the door looks considerably different to even when you were perhaps an individual contributor. But just how did that impact you, as a human? It sounds like you have a partner, you had kids. It just seems like it could resonate in so many different ways.
And employees, right? And so that was tough, especially when you're young. But I think everybody, when I hire somebody, I'm saying, hey, come on my back. I'm going to make sure your family is provided for. And when you couldn't do that, that's very difficult. Luckily, we didn't have to lay anybody off or anything of that nature. And I only had 4 employees at the time, so it wasn't like a ton. But Michelle and I made the sacrifices instead of doing it for them, making any sacrifices that way. And then it's just grinding, right? Hey, let's go back and make sure that we are doing the things that need to do in order to build the business back up to where it was and keep going. And then, so we started doing that. The other one, the tech one or the mortgage tech, that one we raised Series A money fairly easy, but Series B money was kind of hard to come by. So we ended up selling that kind of in a fire sale. So no, definitely didn't make the money off the dot-com bubble, more rode the burst. But that was an interesting experience as well, because it was so easy to raise the money and start a new business and everybody's happy. And then when things are going south, right, in that business and you don't have the money to pay anybody, we did not have the money to pay anybody in that one. It was interesting. But the other one is on the IT company. It was just grinding, making sure that we were doing the right things for our customers, making sure that we were doing the connections and keep going. And ever since then, since we came out of that in 2001, Integrated Access is the name of that company, which I'm no longer affiliated with. We never had a down year. It didn't matter. I tell people this all the time, is that it didn't matter what the economy was doing. It didn't matter what president was in the White House or got elected. If you utilize those things to affect you, then I feel like it's just an excuse. Did we grow more in the other years than some? Yes. Did our expenses go? But we were always up in revenue and profit from previous years for 22 years.
Wow. It's a healthy reminder, I think, even in today's time, right? Like I talk to leaders, business leaders, even individual contributors, where it feels very volatile. And even in the tech space, I had two conversations yesterday with colleagues, who have noticed, they're being impacted by M&A uncertainty of like, well, if we're being acquired and there's 8 other companies being acquired, they don't need 8 CFOs, right? So they are looking at the landscape and preparing. And there's a lot of conversation about things shrinking and posts being ghost postings. And, there's a lot of anxiety, it feels,
Yeah.
in the air. And, it's interesting that you said it's kind of like reminding me of in sport, right? Where I've worked with a ton of coaches in my career where they really strive for that, like John Wooden-esque kind of just never too high, never too low, and let the noise and the shitstorms swirl around them, but they just kind of come back to like a central steady focus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that. I just listened to a podcast yesterday. I just joined this thing this week, a virtual training called Superhuman. And the guy does a podcast every Monday. And it goes right into what you're saying. His title is Champions Win Ugly, meaning you don't have to have the best environment, right? You may be hurt a little bit. You may need this. It may be raining, but those are excuses for other people, but champions don't have those excuses. They persevere. May not be your best day, right? But you're going to figure out a way to win. And that's the key in business too.
Find a way mindset is
Yeah, that's right.
so crucial. I talk a lot with leaders around that grind and the impact of that grind. And certainly all of us achievers, those doers resonate with this idea of grit, like passion and perseverance towards those outcomes or those goals. But also from my own journey, there's also a flip side where I titled it psychotic grit, where it is that grit detached from the reality. Maybe it's the reality of the impact that it's having on your own well-being, maybe detachment from the reality or awareness of how your grind is impacting your loved ones or your family circle or your friends, your other relationships, or even your team and the performance at work. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you sustain your performance over time and you are in that grind, and work is not the only thing you do. You step into so many other
Yeah.
roles in your life, but what
Yeah.
helps you recover and like basically stay in the ring when you're getting punched around?
Yeah. I think 2 things. Well, probably a bunch of things, but I think a few things is I've always loved what I did. So I think that's a huge portion of that. If you feel like it's work and you have this thing where I need this work-life balance. Like I hate that term,
I hate
right?
that.
It's terrible. So if I enjoy my work, it's just part of my life. Right. And so, having a 40-hour work week or what, that just doesn't exist, because what else are you going to do? If you love what you're doing, it's almost like a hobby. So I think that's one important piece is you got to love what you do. And in that becomes, if you're building something strictly for a financial reason, I think that's increasingly more difficult. Right. So you got to understand what your desire or love language is in order to do the right things on that. I love to build things. That's what I figured out. Like money's not a motivator for me. Um, It's for my wife. No, so I got to make sure that's good. No, but it's not the main thing that motivates me. Building teams, and I think that's the second portion of that is understanding that there's some people out there that just have to grind all the time, right? It's just their nature, and they feel if they're not doing it. I don't have that aspect. I've always wanted to grow to the next level of my maturity as a leader, and so that way if I can build, I heard this like 15 years ago. It's really cool if you can build leaders. Like if you can teach people how to lead, but what's really cool is if the people you taught can teach other people how to lead. And so that's like, that was something in my mind all the time. So I was very deliberate. Plus always having two different really careers going on. I could never stay in one thing all the time. Even if I was grinding, it wouldn't look like I was grinding to either side. And so we had to build from the beginning. You had to get great people, which I was very lucky with, and make sure that it can run without you. And that was a tough lesson to learn for a little bit. I remember, 2010 was one of the times I really realized, like, okay, I've got to start figuring out how to make that this thing could run without me, because some of us want to hold on to that. Like, this company needs me. It's my soul. It used to be me and my partner. People always wanted us too. What was really, really impactful and exciting for me is when we had customers, I'd meet them. We had customers that I didn't even know who they were, and they didn't know who I was. Because that means now it's not about us as individuals, it's about the company. Especially for entrepreneurs, I find that's a difficult thing because it's their identity as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if nobody can do it better than them or this or that, and then it's simply not true. It's more a reflection on themselves.
I love that mindset shift or that perspective taking, right? Like the subtle shift between this isn't about me, this is about, I guess one could make an argument of like your legacy of leadership, right? How you impact the next generation and then the next generation after that. But when we talk about sustaining whatever you're building, right? Sustaining your marriage, sustaining, your family, sustaining your company. It really, if you kind of cling to that ego, cling to that identity that this is about me all the time, it's just really almost like handcuffs, right? It handcuffs you from being able to like create, the systems, create the relationships with the people. In your world, there's a lot of technology, right?
Yeah.
Or processes, but yeah,
Yeah.
I can
Both.
appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting if people are focused more about them. Not that they can't succeed. I'm sure they succeed all the time. It's just nothing that I've been part of seeing successful people is it's always about building up other people. Like that's what I love. I love the ability. It's funny. One time somebody's asking me, I said, not that I don't care about money. Like it comes with the things if you're successful, but I cared about, I don't know another way to say it other than power. Like I love the ability of saying, hop on my back. Let's do this together. And then propping those people up and taking them to a next level, or changing their lives. Everybody at Integrated Access, their lives changed when we sold that company. They got multiple times their salary deposited into their retirement accounts, right? So it was life changing for everybody there. But when I see other people, I've got people who continue to work with me. They tell me how thankful they are for me giving them the opportunity because they're not sure. And I've had 3 or 4 people, not just one, that would never had that opportunity. They don't think, and I'm just dumbfounded. Like I'm grateful that they would, come with me on this journey because I'm bringing them because they rock. They do. They're the ones who make me better, and I love it that it makes them feel that way. So I feel pride on anyway is where I feel like I've been successful. When I feel successful, it's when I've been able to get other people elevated.
The power that comes in that connection, it sounds like it was very much reciprocated, right? The gratitude they're extending to you. And then also that I hear you share and that like, hey, I'm just glad you're on my team, man.
That's right.
That's huge. That's huge. So I'm really curious. You got your start in a disruptive time with the tech bubble. And now we're in this space with the AI. And I will be the first to say I'm the person who knows very little. I type in like what's the best chicken recipe and chat GPT and I
Like
find,
Google search.
yeah, I'm replacing it basically instead of Googling it. I'm just curious for leaders in who well, really for all of us because it's cutting across industry, but leaders who are experiencing this new disruption, right? And maybe you're in fintech or you're an investment bank or you're an attorney and you're seeing, or a kid coming out of college and you're seeing a lot of these information or early career entry level jobs kind of shrinking a good bit. Like, what advice or like what takeaways would you have for that type of like the uncertainty adversity, given your experience in tech in particular during these very disruptive kind of peaks and valleys?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. One, there's always something that is going to be disruptive, right? So if you're scared that your job's not going to be there, then it probably wasn't going to be there anyway, right? Something was going to evolve. And I know from my IT days, our company had to shift its focus. We were like five different companies during the time. It was about every 3 to 5 years because technology changed so much. If you look at everybody's businesses, you used to fill out papers to do work orders and things, and now you do it on your phone and you pay instantly, and you used to have to do accounting. So it's one of those things of never stop learning. And that's the same thing as, it's interesting when you said that, hey, there's 8 companies and they only need one CFO. Well, it shouldn't matter whether you're the right CFO for that one or not, because if you're good at your job, it should be easy to find another place, right? I don't think as entrepreneurs, we should be worried about that, or even executives. Like, if you're good at your job, you're and good at your skill, right? Then you should have another thing there. And if you've learned one thing, why can't you learn another? You should embrace the changes and look forward to see where it's going. Look where it's going and try to get ahead of it, as more than being concerned about it. I've got a friend who has a consulting company and they have stickers on all their laptops, pivot or die, you know, and that's true. Like, you got to pivot. Like, they had big cruising and were growing exponentially every year and had great government contracts there in financial services, had some with bank lenders. They're in the mortgage industry because I do stuff in the mortgage industry. And then, a lot of it dropped off, but they didn't go, poor me, right? They went out and found different industry segments to consult on, and they kicked butt.
So really, what I hear you talking about is, yeah, there's great adversity and there's going to be an impact, right? Whether you're frustrated, disappointed, or have the anxiety around there, and it's an and, not an or, right? And you can kind of still go out and see in the midst of turmoil or adversity, there's likely still an opportunity out there. Maybe it's to
There's
learn and transition, evolve your skill set. Maybe it's, as your friend did, maybe evolve the business into a different segment, or so no need to just throw your hands up, I guess.
That's right. Definitely not, right? Realign what your goals are. And, especially I think of manufacturing, small businesses that were manufacturing this time when the tariffs came. I'm sure that a lot of them really got hit on that and was, very difficult. But, you've got to pivot and understand, how are we going to do this long term? How are we going to do it short term? And it may mean short term, you're not going to make as much money as you did last year. But you know what? You got to figure it out. Find other manufacturers. Do whatever you need to do. You know. So I think those are hugely important, instead of just going, "Well, I'm screwed." And you saw. At least I've listened to a lot of podcasts of people who have done that, and it just
And
doesn't.
adaptability, right? Like, I
That's
mean,
right.
people talk about even like on an individual level, like the healthiest of people tend to be those who are the most psychologically flexible. And right, when you're talking about those who would be termed as successful or able to advance the business side of it and leadership, it has to be that critical adaptability, pivot or die. I like that. I could kick this with you for a really long time, Jonathan, and I'm sure we'll continue the conversation. In wrapping here, I do typically like to leave that immediate actionable takeaway or that piece of tool or advice, something that maybe is in your daily practice that you have found that helps ground you, has helped you in your leadership journey, growing perhaps your businesses or even strengthen your network and relationships around you, so that who knows what's around the next turn could be an opportunity for you to make an impact, kind of basically leave that legacy. So is there an immediate actionable piece of advice or some type of strategy or tool that you use?
Yeah. So I would say 110% when you said that comes to mind is traction. So I've used Entrepreneur's Operating System is the system it's called, and Traction is the book. I've used that for 15 years in 4 different businesses that I've had, and I've helped probably a dozen different businesses implement it. It's just gives you clarity, accountability, and transparency in your business. And there's probably 13 other systems out there. It's just the one that I started with and resonated with my group at the time and us. And it's awesome. I use it in every business I have now. What I'll say is read the book, listen to the audiobook. And if you read it and you think, hey, it's not for me, or I couldn't do this because 100,000 companies out there have implemented and been successful at it. You're not special. Yeah.
I love it. Super helpful resource, Traction. Go read, go grab the audiobook. I love it. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that.
Thank you.